Well, hi folks, it's grape time. It's 1st of September today, so the grapes are ripening, and so we're starting to pick them. I just started a little while ago. This is what I've gotten so far. Now, a couple things about this. These are wild grapes growing here. I did not plant these. I don't cultivate these. I don't prune them, spray them, or do anything to them. They're purely natural. So it's a great blessing of living here that we get this kind of harvest every fall. They grow along the tree rows here. I'll show you where these are from in a second. And I believe the variety is they're called a wild fox grape. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but I do believe that they are in the Concord family. They're not a table grape. They're not sweet enough to sit and eat. But as far as for juice, grape drink, grape jelly, things like that, even for making homemade wine, they've got a great flavor, very robust. And this year, despite all the rain, they seem to have done very well. They're good size. Now, these wild grapes are nowhere near as prolific as the kind that you would see, say, in a vineyard that have been planted and cultivated. The clusters are nowhere near as large. Probably the quality isn't quite as good either, but I also didn't have to put the hundreds of hours into cultivating the grapes to get this harvest, so I'll take that trade-off any day. So let me just show you here. All I simply use is just a basket or something to catch them in, and what I will do is, why is this darn focus giving me trouble again? There we go. I don't know why it's doing that. I just use a regular pruners, just like I used for the raspberries. It's very easy to cut them off with that. And here I am along the field row here, and you can see there are grapevines growing up the trees and in the weeds. I've already picked through the low stuff here, and if you look now up into the trees a bit more, you can see them in there growing. Maybe 5, 6, 8 grapes to a cluster. Nothing huge, but still, like I said, they're wild. They're growing on their own. I don't have to take care of them. They just grow every year by themselves, basically. We've had a few bad years when the weather was just bad, or with a late frost. What I've found is if the wild cherries blossoms get frosted and there are no wild cherries for the birds to eat, they'll come in and go after the grapes. I talked to a guy one time who had a vineyard who said the same thing, that he runs into that trouble once in a while. Let me just come down here with you. There's another section right along here. I have a section on the other side of the field that's not quite ripe yet. They're a slightly different variety, I think, but still very good quality. And their clusters are a bit bigger. And if you look up there in the trees, you can see them growing in there. And then if you look out through in amongst the branches, you can see just how well they're growing this year. So I've got a lot of harvesting to do right in this section. There are a lot of grapevines growing along this tree row here between the fields. Not all of them produce. I'm not sure why some do and some don't. I know that they tell you that with cultivated grapes you have to prune them every year if you want to get a harvest, but that's not the case here. I'm not really doing any pruning. I'll cut stuff out of my way while I'm harvesting, but other than that, I'm not really doing anything as far as changing how they're growing naturally. So, and you can see there's still plenty up in the tree there for me to have to get, and I'll keep working on those. And then over on the other side of the field there, my drowned cornfield here, I can get in close enough that you can see it. Over across the way there are more grapevines growing there, and there are a lot in there I've seen. I also have some that are down beyond the barn in the heavy brush down in there. I've seen them too that I've gotten before. So I've got my work cut out for me for the next couple weeks. They're ripe now. I've got to get these picked or I'm going to lose them. There's some on the ground already. But we'll see what we can do to turn these into something that's good. I'll tell you about some of the other recipes later, but this is where we are now. This is end of August, beginning of September here where we live. It's grape season, so we're going to it. Well, folks, as you can see, we've done our picking, and there's a bowl full of grapes here, and also a dish strainer full of grapes here. And our plan tonight to deal with them is going to be to juice them with our juicer. Now, if you watched the video on the processing of the tomatoes, you know how this works. If you didn't, we'll show you this in operation. This way, what we'll have is just pure grape juice, and we can then freeze it, or even if we wanted to can it, we could. It'll be ready to turn into well, either it could be used to make wine or it could be used to make grape jelly. We're not sure yet at this point, but this way we're processing them, getting them so that they won't go bad, and yet we don't need to use them for their final purpose at this point yet. So hang in there, we'll show you this in action a little bit. It's a bit noisier than the tomatoes because you got the grape seed in there to deal with, but this does handle them too, and you'll see how you turn a bunch of grapes into grape juice. Okay, here we go. Oop. Told you this was noisier than the tomatoes. And also the grapes have a tendency to bounce back out. As you can see, we're getting high quality juice. Oh, there we go. It's not quite as smooth as doing the tomatoes, but it's a good soupy grape juice. Perfect either for turning into wine or turning into grape jelly. There we go, all done. All those grapes turned into about 2.5 quarts of concentrated, it's almost like puree rather than just juice, but we'll turn this into whatever we decide. But that's today's Grape Harvest, processed and just ready to be dealt with. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel.